my name is Johan, and I want to talk about how you can start learning languages somewhat famously, just as the large slide with text says. Learning languages in 2024 has become, oddly enough, increasingly difficult, mostly because not only have we reduced our attention spans, but also companies are much more focused on making you buy their apps than actually trying to teach you a language. So in order to do this, I'm going to talk about what you should not do first, and then I'm going to tell you a systematized approach as to how you should learn languages, what you should focus on, and what you should expect. So let's begin with my qualifications. I recently did IELTS and finished it with an 8.5, which means I speak English at the C2 level. And also I can speak French conversationally, which I've been learning for I think about 2 or 3 years. Okay, so first of all, I'm going to refer to the language that you're learning as your target language. On the internet, you might also see it sometimes called TL, but I'm not writing here, so I won't use confusing acronyms, don't worry. So first off, let's talk about, as I said, what you should not do. First off, Duolingo. Forget about it. Don't use it, ever. If you talk to anyone who actually learns languages and manages to get results, they do not use Duolingo and they tell you to stay away from it constantly. It just has a really good advertising program, but it's the worst possible way you can learn a language. After several months, you'll be stuck at A1 or A2 at best. Okay, that's all. Now, the next thing is very similar to Duolingo, but it's books and courses like learn Urdu in 3 days, speak Chinese fluently within a month. The only language that you can learn in 3 days is Morse code. Otherwise, you should not expect to achieve such results quickly. And there are some YouTubers, such as Chillmatic, who say that they speak 56 languages, all of which they learned in 24 hours. He actually did say this. And when you watch his videos, you can tell that he learned them in 24 hours, because in, for example, his Welsh video, the top comment says that he sounds like he's a 7-year-old who just started learning language at school. And the last thing is unfortunately very common, but not as bad as the other ones, and that's language classes which are entirely based on teaching you grammar. When you're learning a language, you should learn just as much vocabulary as grammar. Grammar is the system and the shape, but to actually communicate things, you need to know words. So, I'm going to say that maybe these can be useful, except for Duolingo, just forget about it. But you have to pair them with better methods, which I'm going to talk about first. Now, first off, if learning languages is that easy, why is everyone not a polyglot? Why don't you see everyone speaking 5 languages? Or 56. And the thing is pretty simple. Generally, people say that adults cannot form new cells, so they cannot learn language, which is not only false, but also just an excuse to be lazy. But the thing lies somewhere else, and you can understand it with 2 pictures. So here's a photo of a baby learning a language. Just take it in for a bit. And here's a photo of an adult learning a language. So you can see there's a bit of a difference. But once you start delving deeper into it, that's where the deep devil lies. So, for instance, a baby is always surrounded by the target language. Their family is always talking to them. The family uses simple vocabulary, but they use complex grammar as well. They use subjunctives, cases. They do not simplify their speech that much. And in addition to that, the baby gets 10 or more hours of exposure daily. However, an adult, they only learn their target language in the class. So immediately as they leave the classroom, they do not continue studying. Most people, of course. They use simple vocabulary and simple grammar because language classes have a tendency to oversimplify speech, avoiding subjunctives and other things like that. And finally, they only get 1 to 5 hours of exposure per week, which is many times less than a baby gets per day. So, I'm going to talk about how you should learn languages simply, because generally you don't get a very systematized approach. You just get thrown deep into it with a bunch of exercises. However, you can really break down a language into 2 elements. It's your input skills and your output skills, which, said simply, your input is how much you're able to comprehend the language, whether through listening or reading, and output is how well you're able to speak and effectively communicate ideas. However, output is pretty hard to train, and what I mean by that is that you probably won't be able to speak to native speakers from day one. I know this because I tried to talk to French people with my A1 and I ended up terrifying them. So let's begin with the input methods because they're the simpler ones, and I made a brief tier list of them. So on the D tier, you can see the very familiar bird there. You can tell I don't like him very much. On B, you have books. Now books, they make a really good resource when you're a patient person, because you can learn vocabulary, see the structure. If you don't understand something, you can just reread it. However, they might test your patience a bit, so I would suggest not over relying on them. Another method is podcasts, which is really good for passive listening. Like if you're going to take a walk, you can put on a podcast in German. And even if you don't understand anything, your brain still processes. It learns to separate different sounds in the language, learns where one word ends and the other starts, and most importantly, how you should learn pronunciation. Now in the A tier, as for stuff that works really well, you have flashcards, so apps like Anki and Quizlet, and also films. Now the good thing about films is that you're not only receiving visual input by watching the film and maybe reading the subtitles, but you're also hearing them speak it. So you witness the language in a context in which it's likely to be used, as in spoken by actual people. So this makes for a really good method of practice. If you don't understand the word, you can look at the actor, see the gestures that they're making, the facial expression on their face, and that really helps you figure out what they mean. Now, in the S tier, we have the two best language methods, which one are the Asomil learning series, which are unfortunately only available in English and French, but you can talk to me later and I can send you some PDFs. They're really, really good. And of course, the next thing is humans, actual people. So Mr. Wright approached me recently and told me about how he was in Western Africa, and because no one there spoke English, he had to learn French, and he learned to speak it really, really quickly. He had to use it. Immersion is probably the best thing that you can do. However, as I said before, it's pretty difficult, so just hold that in your head for a bit. I'll talk about it later. So as for your output methods, without speaking to people, you have a couple which I would really recommend. And the first one, my favorite for learning French, is translation. So you take a text, any text, in your native language, and then you translate it into your target language. This can be anything. It can be a book chapter, a poem, a text conversation you've had with someone. And what it means is that you're learning vocabulary in precisely the area that you want it to be. You are in control here. And the next thing here is writing your diary in the target language. Not only are you writing your diary, which research proves is extremely good for you, but you're also learning a language along the way. And in the future you can read back on it, and that way you also get reading practice, not only writing practice. So when you get brave enough to actually speak to people, you can start with what I think is probably one of the best language learning app you can get for free, and that's HelloTalk. Unfortunately, they're not sponsoring me, but if HelloTalk is watching this, I'm open to future offers. What HelloTalk is it's a texting app, but you get to talk to natives. And the people there are awesome. They'll correct you very gently, they'll talk about any topic that you wish. And in doing so, you're getting both input and output at the same time. You're reading their texts, trying to understand them, and of course there's a built-in dictionary which is really helpful. But you're also texting back. This makes talking to native speakers very convenient. You can do it from any point in the world. You don't have to pay them or make sure that they're actually physically near you. So now that we've gone through the learning methods, which you should remember, they're very good, I should talk about why you want to learn the language. Now the world is a really big place. There are tens of thousands of languages out there. And some of the best conversations I've had was when I spoke to someone in their native language and they were surprised to hear it. I can tell you it's a very warm feeling. It's a feeling of true human connection. And I can assure you that learning languages, as you've probably learned through managing to speak English, is one of the best experiences that being a human can offer. So if you're ready to join the rest of the world, I suggest that you start learning languages now. Thank you.